Hey, Amber. So it's nice to have you here today with me, talking about all different kinds of issues with Meditation Magazine.
Yeah, thank you
So
so much
thank you
for
so
having
much for
me.
being here. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Super
So
grateful.
yeah, I've watched some of your Instagram content recently. My wife introduced me to your work through a mutual friend of ours, Christine Rodriguez
Oh, cool.
in Texas. I don't know. I think you know her, right?
Yes,
She's
yes.
she's the host of Astrology Now. She's
Yes, yes. I love her work so much. Yes.
yeah. So yeah, she's like a family friend of Giovanna's, and
Awesome.
it's nice to be able to connect you with you in that way. I I'm familiar with before Giovanna introduced us. I was more familiar with your work because you were with JP Sears. You were
Yeah.
married,
Yeah.
and JP. I remember watching him at the beginning,
Yes.
like a long time ago, and thinking, okay, this is like funny spiritual stuff, sort of like semi like satirical about the spiritual community, and I was like, okay, this is fair. Like he has a lot of fair points and like
Agreed.
kind of like needles your ego a little bit, and I was like, okay, that's cool, and I really liked it. I used to share his videos, and then at some point he took a really hard turn politically.
Yeah.
Which hard turn to the right. I think he converted to Christianity, as far as I could understand, or maybe he was already Christian, but he got more religious,
Mm,
and then it just I started finding it hard to watch some of his videos personally
sure.
because they really rubbed against my own personal belief system, which was growing up in New York and living in Miami now, like skewed pretty liberal,
Yeah.
which the sort of the bubble that I grew up in.
Sure.
But I guess we all grow up in different bubbles and we all go into different ways of relating to the world.
Yeah.
So I want to get into some of the stuff about politics and stuff like that later. Maybe I watched Plandemic, the whole thing, the first, second, and half of the third uh, movies yet last night while feeding the baby, and I honestly was very surprised that I found it to be very convincing.
Yes.
And I found, and I don't know, there's a lot of debunking videos, but then Plandemic kind of debunks the debunking videos, and it's very
Yes.
confusing. So
Yes.
so we can get into that in a few minutes.
Sure.
But first, I just want to start out with some, getting to know each other questions. Actually, first, do you want to do a little breath work? Do you want to do a little breath work with me just to get like on the same brain wavelength?
Sure.
Yeah. Do you know how to do there's a sort of intense. Oh, you're probably you might be familiar with Wim Hof, or there's some that are bellows breath, where you're kind of taking a really deep, like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm cool to whatever. I do a lot of Kundalini breath work, and that's kind of
nice.
just from my yogic background, and some
Yeah,
Vipassana style meditation, things
yeah,
like that. But yeah, I'm open. Whatever you wanted to do, I'm down.
yeah. Kundalini and Vipassana, they're good complements to each other. I kind of use very similar. I use also Kundalini breath work that is it's called Ananda Mandala. I don't know if you've heard that one. It's
Oh, no, no.
basically going through the chakras while doing the breath work,
Oh,
and you're sort of
interesting.
pulling the energy upward.
Yeah,
It's
fascinating.
but we don't have time for that right now. That's a long one. But we could just breathe a little bit. And then I use also a meditation that's just a silent meditation, sort of similar to Vipassana from like Southeast Asia. And the
Great.
two of those balance really well. We can get into that in a few minutes. Let's just start with the breath work if that works for you. Maybe like a minute of breath work, just deep, rapid breathing, and then hold it out and then hold it in.
Okay, so
So
what
it'll
was
take
the
like a
what
minute or two.
can you teach me what
So
the
deep,
what
rapid breath like this.
gotcha. So inhale through the nose, exhale through the nose.
Yeah, are you able to see that?
Yeah.
The inhales and exhales through the nose, just
Yep. Mhm.
and then holding it out for a few seconds and then holding it in for a few seconds. It gets us into like a really sort of awake kind of headspace to have like a really deep conversation.
Sure. Yep,
Okay,
I'm open for it.
let's do it. Okay. Let's just hold the breath out for a moment. Okay, and take a deep breath in. And back to normal breathing. Yeah. So I don't know if I didn't really give any instructions. I don't know if you could hear my inhales and
I
exhales
could.
through Zoom
I
or through
could.
this.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So if you do that for a little longer, it can get you into a really like tingly and sort of high feeling state. Not that we do it for the high, but we do it for the clarity. I think the clarity and the insight and the awakening of the nervous system that allows us to have like a really deep conversation, not just like your average surface level interview, but something deep,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah, totally.
So I want to start out just by asking how are you doing? How's life? How are you feeling in life?
Yeah, life has been intense. I'm at the tail end of a divorce, which has been incredibly difficult for a lot of reasons, right? Like life is shifting in a huge way, and so yeah, I think that right now I'm just in this place of really rebirthing my business and shifting things in a huge way, professionally, as my personal life is shifting so much as well. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still
I'm
here.
sorry, your video
I'm still here.
disappeared. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I put you on the solo layout. I put you on the solo layout because I wanted to give you the space to be able to talk on your own, without me being like next to you.
Oh, okay.
So it's yeah, it's just a layout thing. Don't worry about that. I'm gonna do that again if that's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah, just to poke into that, like I know you're saying that the divorce has been really hard.
yeah.
I think you're a mother of a 4.5-year-old. I'm also the
Yes.
dad of a 4.5-year-old.
Yes.
She was born in the pandemic.
Yes.
During the height of the COVID thing, I couldn't go into the hospital with Giovanna, and that was pretty hard at times
Yeah. Yeah.
because we were in New York. I think you might have been in Texas at the time, or I'm not
Yeah.
sure where you
Yeah,
were.
we
Yeah,
were in
Texas, right?
Texas, and I mean, he couldn't JP couldn't come into the, ultrasound room to, to hear the heartbeat and see the baby on the ultrasound. It was just a very weird time, but I had a home birth, so I wasn't dealing with the hospital, thank God.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's so you were able to have a lot of the togetherness and without all the terrible effects of being in the hospital during the pandemic where that you have I had to sleep on the floor
Yeah.
with a mask on.
Oh, it's
I
horrible.
wasn't allowed to take off my mask even to sleep. My mask even to sleep. I was laying on the floor with the mask on, and then if I wanted to take my mask off, I kind of like covered myself in the blanket completely on my head so that the nurses wouldn't see that I took off my mask, because if they did, they would yell at me. That was pretty crazy.
Yeah, it was a
Uh,
very crazy time, but luckily, being here in Texas, I think, things were still really tight at the hospitals in terms of masking and all that, but
mhm.
outside of the hospitals, it was very much more lenient than I think in the more liberal cities in the US.
Yeah. So I think this leads into one of the conversations I want to have a little bit later about the pandemic videos and movies and what you think about those things. But
Yeah.
um, I've been seeing lately that you're posting about other things which are really interesting about psychedelics. One of the things that you
Yeah.
mentioned was that you had experience with ayahuasca,
Yep.
but you were um, you're pretty balanced in your viewpoint. It seemed like you had some nuance to it about how these substances can be used in a positive way and in a negative way.
Yeah,
I
very
want to
much.
get your feedback on some of those things. Do you think that psychedelics are um, overall a positive thing, or do you think that overall a negative thing, or do you think that there's it depends on how you use it? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's really how you use it. So for me, I worked with ayahuasca. So to give you guys some background, I worked extensively with ayahuasca for about 7 years. I actually led ayahuasca healing retreats in Costa Rica
Mm.
with a shamanic healing center. So I was on the path for a long time with that specific medicine, right? And so I saw profound healing, transformation, like miraculous medical healing, mental, emotional healing. I mean, people, overcoming addiction with one ceremony. I personally went through a huge healing from my eating disorder when I was younger. I had a huge clearing, emotional baggage clearing from all my work with ayahuasca. It was a very transformative tool for me in my own healing journey, which is why I started working with it so extensively and intentionally, and why I started producing retreats with it. So For me, that was a huge part of my path. And then when I moved to Austin, I was introduced to the kind of conscious community scene here in Austin, which was bastardizing that work in a huge way, which is what happens in the West, unfortunately, right? They take these ancient indigenous traditions from the jungle and bring them into Western culture, which is go harder, go faster, push harder, have the craziest, most wild thing happen in these ceremonies, right? That you're just pushing people to their absolute max. And unfortunately, there is a big shadow side to that work. These plants are super, super powerful, but they can be used in dark ways. And they can be used just, you can overdo it to the extent where you are, some people, experience psychosis. They have massive nervous system dysregulation and blowouts happen. People have psychotic breaks. There are negative shadow sides to this work that you have to be very aware of. And so it's really about your intention going into it. It's about how you're honoring the work. Are you working with lineages? Are you working with the indigenous? Are you working in the traditional way you work with these medicines? And I'm specifically speaking about ayahuasca and iboga and those sorts of entheogenic medicines. Now, if you want to talk about like psilocybin and you want to talk about ketamine, like I think that each one deserves its own, let's say, focus in terms of like learning how is best to work with it, right? And yes, there's a shadow side to all of it. So yes, you can overdo, like anything, you can abuse these substances, even if they're not addictive. You can abuse them. And that's what I've been speaking about recently is I think in the conscious community, there's this normalization and minimizing of addiction that is very rampant right now, specifically with ketamine, with kratom, even with psilocybin. People are using these substances really habitually. And in my personal experience, these substances are incredibly powerful. And you really have to honor your body and the wisdom of your body and your nervous system. You really have to be intentional with them and integrate from them and be, ceremonial in how you use them in order to really gain the benefit from them. Otherwise, you're just using them as a party drug
Yeah, what do you think about the way that they're using it in Oregon, where they've legalized the use of psilocybin in clinical settings where you're with a therapist or a psychologist or something, specific facilitator? Do you feel like that would be enough of like a ceremonial setting to
Yeah.
use those in a smart way?
Absolutely. I think it's really important that you have a safe container, right? That you've got preparation, you've got integration, you've got someone there supporting you through this experience. Like it is how, like the setting, intention, and the integration is everything. And if you are going into these experiences just in like party mode, and you're really, I think, missing the whole point of working with these substances. If you're going to work with psilocybin, work with or ketamine, work with it in that sort of therapeutic setting where you have the support, you have someone there to help you integrate, because sometimes these experiences take you into really dark places of your psyche and your ancestral trauma and your personal trauma. And you really, if you don't know how to navigate those spaces, it can be really intense and it can take you a long time to recover from them if you don't have the right support. And so for me, yes, I think there's so much beauty in that. Same thing with MDMA. I think there's a lot of benefit and value, when you look at anxiety and depression and all these kind of more common things that people are experiencing right now in epidemic proportions in the US. Like I would actually choose psilocybin over something like an SSRI, right? Because I
Yeah,
really do
definitely.
believe that is helping your brain rewire and create new neural pathways, whereas SSRIs are actually proven to not even help you with your serotonin and all these things that they claim that they do, right? And
Yeah, that's true.
for
I've
me,
been yeah, go ahead, wrap up.
yeah,
I
so for
was
me,
gonna tell
like,
you about sorry, keep interrupting. Go ahead.
that's okay. So for me, like, when I was working in the jungle with these plants, I would have people come down who wanted to desperately get off their SSRIs because they felt trapped
Mhm.
on them, right? If they started to try to wean off of them, they'd have these massive headaches and tremors and all these like really horrible symptoms from coming off of them. And they were so desperate to get off of them and try something different, right? That was a more natural approach that would help them heal on a deeper root level versus just this kind of symptom level of let's just like fix the serotonin, which is like proven now that's actually not even what's happening with these SSRIs. And it's actually
Mm.
not even what's happening when you're depressed, right? So anyway, there's like the whole all that being revealed. But like my preference always is to go the more natural approach. And these plants and these substances have really powerful medicinal properties and healing power if we use them in the correct way, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that they definitely are better than SSRIs in terms of healing the deep roots of issues,
Yeah.
where you can start to see your own sort of inner traumas and pathologies and all these different things that you're seeing within your psyche. when
Right.
you're deep in a psychedelic trip. And I think that there are a lot of people in the meditation community that see that sort of see psychedelics, ayahuasca and all of these other ones in a way where they're thinking of it as sort of a drug similar to SSRIs, where you're just kind of doing something
Sure.
to fix yourself.
Sure.
Um, and maybe the SSRIs are more of a short-term fix where you have to stay on them in order to have any effect, whereas the SSRIs are more long-term. But I think a lot of people, I've talked to, for example, Sadhguru. I had like an argument with him in one of our MedMag interviews where he was saying that psychedelics are bad because it's just a drug, and I was trying to say, if you actually experience it, you get these deep insights that are really helpful for being able to heal from things. So they could be
Absolutely.
emotional insights too. So there is that strain of people in the meditation community, but I think it's nice to talk to people where I feel like you have nuance about it. You know what I mean? You have like the balance,
Absolutely.
because then there's on the other side of the spectrum, there's the people like you said that are just like, oh, just take it all the time and do all these sort of overdoing it and spiritually bypassing and
Yeah.
not combining it with meditation or other inner work. So
And I can also speak to, like, that was me prior to working with psychedelics, was me going, "Oh my god, they're drugs." Like, I'm very anti-drug, I'm very sober, I'm very, like, straight edge, right? That was me for years prior to. I was a raw vegan for 8 years, by the way, like, I was hardcore purist, right? And then my first psychedelic experience was with ayahuasca, which is I would never recommend, okay? Like, never recommend. But I did. And so I think that, there until you experience those medicines, you can't speak about them. You can't speak about them as though you know
yeah,
anything about them. And I
I
think
agree.
that's
I
the
agree.
thing that, like, I had this really jaded perspective of, like, "Oh, like, that's just a drug, da, da, da. People are getting addicted, they're sitting too often, whatever." Yeah, yeah, there is a shadow side, and there's a lot of profound healing that can happen as well if you're willing to take that leap and experience those things. And then once you do, you
Yeah,
realize, like, okay, like, I didn't know much. But I also wanna
yeah,
point out that, like, meditation allows you to access those spaces as well. And I think what a lot of people struggle with, like, I know in my own yogic and, like, meditation journey, I struggled with knowing, like, where my capacity was. Like, I couldn't reach those places in terms of, like, feeling my multidimensional nature or connecting to spirit in that profound way through my meditation alone. And maybe I could have if I had gone and sat in, like, a dark cave for 2 weeks and meditated with a bunch of monks, but, like, I wasn't doing that. I was sitting on my yoga mat. And so I think that those experiences gave me the opportunity to connect to that space, and then it was much easier for me to connect to that space in my meditations
yeah,
without the
yeah. I
substances
think that's a
being
good
used.
way to explain it. There's an old phrase that from, I think it was Allen Ginsberg. Somebody said that the LSD, or will take you to the top of the mountain. It will fly you by the top of the mountain in a helicopter. But if you want to stay at the top of the mountain, you have to make the arduous trek yourself.
I love that.
And I think that that's a really good encapsulation of sort of the difference between the psychedelics and the meditation,
Right.
where you can, when you see the top of the mountain from the helicopter, you're like, okay, okay, I can see that. I know where to go. I can see the path here on the down below me. And then when you're taking the trek, you can actually at least know where you're going, and you know where you're going toward.
Right.
Um, I think that that can be really helpful.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful.
But
Like, for me, like, now I've been completely sober of all mind altering substances for 5 years now. And for me, like, I just really enjoy my meditation practice, and I'm not trying to seek any extravagant experience. Like, I just wanna be with me and my body. I wanna connect to my soul, like, my spirit. Like, that's it. Like, I'm not trying to seek these bigger, larger experiences anymore because I had a lot of that. And I think what I've learned is that living in 3D land is really why we're here. And that
yeah,
if we can learn to live the human experience, that's really what we're here to do. And meditation helps us do that. It helps us be present, helps us be, mentally clear and connected to ourselves. And I think that's the work. And these experiences give us a taste of, like, what's beyond 3D. But again, like, it can be an escape mechanism from
yeah,
3D.
yeah. I was in the Universe issue. I have a few of our magazines here with me. I always like to hold them in case there's something that comes up. But in our Universe issue, I did I had a conversation with Krishna Das. I don't know if you know him. He's pretty
Yeah.
awesome. He was with Ram Dass in India, and he's a musician. And I'm trying to find it in here, but basically, I was asking him. I was trying to ask about the universe, like oneness and existence and these high states of consciousness. And I kept on bringing up Ram Dass quotes from from a long time ago about oneness and existence and everything in the universe. And he just said, Krishna Das kind of looked at me and he said, yeah, I think that was like 1970s Ram Dass or something like that, right? When he was young. But as he got older, he stopped being so interested in these high states, and he just started to get more interested in being present and being loving. He said, Krishna Das said, like the key is all we need to do is we need to calm our asses down. That's it. And I was
I
like,
think
all right.
I think it's the most simple thing. I think especially nowadays with how
Mhm.
chaotic things are and how there's so much upheaval and so much transformation on the planet, so much change happening. Like all that I think we all really
Mm.
need right now is to just be centered and grounded and in our bodies and present and calm. Because that's
Yeah,
I think that's the only
yeah.
way we're going to
I
be
think
sane in all this.
calm is such an important thing right now, for being able to have conversations, with people that have different views on, say, for example, political things. I think that comes when that comes up, that can become such a difficult topic to talk about if
Yep.
you're not calm. You know what I mean? If people are not having a meditation practice, not being able to stay calm in a conversation, sometimes they'll feel triggered by something or set off by something, and even if it's not intentional, it's very easy
Right.
to get into arguments and fights. But I think that having these conversations like this, well, we haven't started really talking about political stuff yet, but I really want to talk about the pandemic thing and RFK and all these things. Um, and having those kinds of conversations can be hard if it becomes an argument. But but we can model for people how you can have like a conscious conversation, even if there's something that you may disagree with. You can still have a conscious conversation. You can still have a nuanced, interesting conversation with a person that you continue to respect, even if you have different views. You know what I mean?
Agreed. Totally. Totally. And I that's why I love what you're doing here with this podcast. I think it's super important nowadays, especially with how polarized and divided our world is, that we get out of this toxic group think mentality,
Mhm.
this black and white dogmatic way of seeing the world, because it makes us other the other person, the other side, and attack and villainize and demonize people that think differently than us. And it's really just such a massive issue right now. And I think it's being done on purpose. It's being done to divide us and create chaos, because that's, I think, how the powers that be stay in control and power. And so that's something that speak about, because I think it matters that we have that nuance and we're willing to sit at the table with people who think differently and have real dialogue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I sometimes it can just be a difference of what powers you think are trying to divide us, right?
Yeah,
So there
exactly.
could be, yeah. So like one person may think that the elite, the coastal elite Democrats or something, are globalists, are trying to divide us.
Right.
Another person might think that the Trump administration is trying to divide us.
Correct.
And maybe we're both right, maybe we're both wrong. I don't know. Who knows? Knowledge is a tricky thing, right? It's hard to know anything.
Yeah.
I feel like there's the only things that we can really know are just our actual sensations. We don't even know, because theoretically, like, we could be in the matrix, right? So like you don't even
Right.
know that this body is real, don't know that these physical things are real. Could be matrix, could be a dream. All we really know is just the actual phenomenal experience that we're experiencing right now. That and just the simple fact that we exist. That's also, we can know that because I think it was Descartes. He said, "I think, therefore I am." Right. So I like to say, I experience, therefore I am.
Yeah. Beautiful.
There's experience, therefore there must be existence. Yeah.
Right.
When it comes to all these political topics and what's going on in the world, it can actually be really hard to know for real, for sure, anything. Like we get all this
I agree.
information, right? We get like a ton of information from media bubbles, from social media bubbles, from like mainstream media bubbles, from disinformation from the top down, like you were saying, people trying to divide us,
Yeah.
misinformation from the bottom up of people just not knowing what's going on.
Right.
It's just like a chaos of information, basically, and we're just trying to, like, I believe this thing. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, we're
Actually,
just
I
trying to
don't
like
know.
shift. I see it as we're trying to like shift through the smoke and mirror and all this illusion. And we're trying to figure out like what is real within all of this. And like,
Yeah.
where do I align with that? And like, If this is real,
Yeah.
then how do I feel about it? And if this is like, so I think right now, I think it's very foggy for most of us. And I think that when you stand on the self righteousness of like, I know what's for sure happening, you're really just, you're still lost because I think you know, but really you don't know. Like
Yeah.
no one really knows unless you're at the top of the elite in this world and you know what's happening on the global scale from those global elite, like you have no idea what's actually happening. And so I think we tend to, we get so stuck in our echo chambers online specifically, right? We're being fed, the algorithms are feeding us the exact same echo chamber things that we think and the things that we talk about. And so like to give you like an example, like I grew up in a very liberal town in Santa Cruz, California, probably the most liberal town in the country. Very liberal, grew up that way. All my teachers are very liberal, grew up that way. And then when I moved to Texas and things started happening with the pandemic, I shifted actually more right leaning for the first time in my life. And so, and I
You
was
were
very
married to
open.
JP at that time, right? You and JP were married at that time.
Yes, and
Yeah.
we were both very liberal prior to the pandemic, and then the pandemic really opened our eyes to a lot of the corruption that was going on, a lot of the weird stuff that was unfolding, and we got really loud about like the amount of what we saw as tyranny and rights being taken away and things that we felt were totally out of line, which unfortunately have been proven to be somewhat correct in terms of like the damaging effects of the vaccine and the masking and the social distancing and all the things that went on during that time that have actually proven to have like really negative impacts on the economy, on society at large, on people's health, right? So we got real loud during that time, but um I think that, we were both open and minded enough to be open to, okay, what the heck are we stepping into? What are we we're trying to discern what is real, what is not real. And for us, we just landed more right leaning at that time because that's what made sense to us. Common sense wise, logically, we started to see through some of the bullshit of the pandemic, and we got to know Mickey Willis, who is the producer of the pandemic films. And so we got to know a lot of these people in the freedom community. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s work came later, of course, but like we were very much entrenched in that community here in Austin, Texas. That's very much like kind of the birthplace of, I'd say, a lot of that movement because Mickey lives here, we live here. There's like a lot of people that are in that Del Big Tree is here. Like a lot of the bigger voices in that freedom movement, the medical freedom movement, are here. And so we got real loud during that time for those reasons. But yeah, we had to really shift and even today, like I was much more right leaning going into this election we just had. And now I'm like really not happy with what Trump's been doing, and again, like I'm not a diehard Trump person. I never was. I really wanted Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to win this election. I was a diehard Robert F. Kennedy Jr. fan, mainly because of his stance on medical freedom and his approach to cleaning up American healthcare and the diets in this country and the health in this country. It's especially with children. Like to me, he's just a beacon of light. And I knew that for him to get into office and where I wanted him to be, it included Trump. And so, so I voted for Trump. Now, do I like what Trump's been doing? Not all of it. I like some of it, but not all of it. And I think that's the thing with all candidates, right? Like I think back to when I voted blue, there were things that Barack Obama did that some of those people did that I was like, what the hell is going on? This isn't aligned with me either, right? And this is the thing with politics. You're never going to have one leader who's doing all the things that you want, right? And even if they claim they're doing the things that you want and they're putting that facade out and that show out, what's happening behind the scenes is something completely different. And there might be a lot of corruption and a lot of shadowy stuff happening that you're not aware of either. And so the show might look really great to you, but what's going on behind the scenes is what's real. So I think right now we're all trying to decipher what the heck is real. There's a lot being exposed right now, a lot being revealed. We're in this really crazy awakening. I think the crumbling of society is happening like before our eyes in terms of like our systems are falling apart. There's a lot of corruption being exposed, and so it's a really exciting but also unnerving time to be alive.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to get into some of these things about the corruption and
Yeah.
the corruption being exposed and the changes that are happening on like the sort of from the Trump administration. But first, since I'm like literally, I'm sort of my head is spinning from the whole pandemic thing.
Yeah.
That came out right at the beginning of the pandemic.
I did.
I didn't watch it because all the news was like this is some crazy stupid
Misinformation.
disinformation. They made it look like it was stupid.
Right.
And that was what stopped me from watching it. It was like, okay, if they're just saying it's misinformation, disinformation, then I'm like, okay, it's probably just that could be media propaganda. I want to see this disinformation that they're censoring.
Exactly.
I have that impulse to, if they're telling me not to watch something, I want to watch it.
Same.
Like
Same.
the Putin interview. I watched the Putin interview with Tucker Carlson, because they
Nice.
were all saying like, "Oh, this is terrible. I shouldn't be interviewing Putin." I was like, "Well, I want to hear what Putin's saying. Even if it's lies, I want to understand what this guy is like."
Totally.
But with Plandemic, they did it in a sneakier way where they were like, "No, this is not even worth your time. This is like it's totally like BS. Obviously BS. If anybody thinks this is true, is they're stupid." And that's kind of how they put it. And then when I actually then I when I was doing research for talking to you, I was like looking at some of your posts. I saw the Plandemic picture that you and JP had attended the premiere, and actually he was in the third Plandemic,
Right.
the Great Awakening, it was called, right? The third
Right.
Plandemic documentary.
Mhm.
And I saw that. I saw up to around that part. A little after that, I had to
Great.
stop because it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I had only gotten like 1 hour of sleep while I was feeding the baby, you know. So when I watched it, the thing that struck me was that I felt like if I was watching it for the first time in a vacuum and I didn't have all these biases that I already have,
Right.
I would just be like, yeah, this seems real. This seems true. Like,
Yeah.
because not because they're just making random claims, but they also present a lot of information on screen. You
That's
know,
it.
like when they're talking, they'll show you the actual papers. You know, like
Right.
the how they this woman, the scientist that said that COVID was being overblown or something. I don't remember what her main, or she was like an AIDS researcher, and she was talking about Fauci being evil basically, and controlling the system through because he had the patents and he was getting paid royalties when people were
Yeah.
getting the vaccines.
Yeah.
Like they actually showed on the screen, you know, here's the papers where she was put in jail but without any charges, you know, like, and then the fact checkers would say, oh, like this is, you know, this is debunked, but meanwhile they're not actually addressing the actual documents that are being shown in the film.
Right.
So there, I didn't get a lot of time to like dig into primary documents and stuff like that, like a good journalist would do. But but as a human being, I found it very convincing, and the whole idea that in the media that it's just stupid. Um, I think that if anybody watches it and they see it's not really stupid, it's actually pretty. I mean, there's a lot of detail here, and if you want to say that it's disinformation, like say it's disinformation, but don't say it's stupid. Don't make people try to. Don't say like if you believe this is then you're stupid. That's kind of what the media did. And then watching that last night, I had this moment of realization of like, damn, like I fell for that.
Yeah.
Even if it's not real, even if the stuff in there is not real, the way that they sort of bashed it into trying to get people to not watch it, I think is counterproductive.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's been the approach of the mainstream media since the beginning of all this, and I think for many years is discrediting what is true and trying to turn people away from truth that might open their eyes to the deeper corruption that's going on. And
Yeah.
so, you know, the amount of people that were speaking about this stuff, speaking out about it at the beginning, the doctors who were diligently speaking about it, got their licenses taken away, were censored, were deplatformed. JP
Mhm.
was at the risk of being deplatformed for speaking about his beliefs on it. And so when you're in that kind of on the front line of seeing what's happening, because you're in it and you're speaking out against it, you see how easily manipulated these social media platforms are and mainstream media is, and how the government had a huge role in that. I mean, it's now
Wow.
very well known that the U.S. government at the time was paying Facebook to censor people. It was there are
Yeah.
documents that prove that. Mark Zuckerberg came out and said that. Like he said, the U.S. government was forcing us to censor people during that time to limit the truth from coming out. And when you hear
So
that, then you
yes,
go, okay, like let's let's break that
I
down, because that's also breaking the Constitution. Like allowing the government
yeah,
to censor the social media is wild.
it's a
It's crazy.
violation of free speech. Yeah, I
Absolutely.
agree. But I so coming from where I came from, which
Yeah.
was my mother is a biologist.
Mhm.
She was like a biology researcher. She like was part of discovering RNA related things, and like she was like
Wow.
a scientist.
Cool.
So like now she teaches at like a medical school and places like that. But she raised me with biology basically when I was like a
Mhm.
kid. Like I understood like pretty deeply into biology stuff that most like college students wouldn't understand like when I was a kid. So
Sure.
because of that, because of being trained as a kid basically. And and I know her to be a very like intelligent and honorable person who like wouldn't go along with something that was bullshit. Basically, she would
Sure.
look into it, and she would be real about it. So with her as a biology expert, always teaching me about vaccines since I was a kid, actually, about how they work, because like that was part of her research, like how they work, how they can prevent illness by training your immune system to prevent the illness, things like that. Um,
Mhm.
when it came into the um, pandemic time, and then there was all this anti-vax thing was sort of like hitting the fan,
Oh yeah.
I was just like, I don't understand this. Like, why don't people want to build their immune systems? I did eventually get an understanding that there were people that just didn't want it to be mandatory, which is, very reasonable, freedom-oriented perspective.
That's it. Yeah.
Um, but then, and that people should be able to make their own choices, and I agree with that almost always. But
Yeah.
I think that the argument was, and I understand the government's argument in this from a public health perspective, because public health was also something I was interested in. If if somebody or a group of people decides not to get vaccines, then the virus will spread through the population, and then people who have immune deficiencies, or are too elderly to be able to get the vaccine, or too young to be able to get the vaccine, would be at risk, and that there is sort of a civic duty, it not necessarily put that way, but to protect the people around you. By immunizing yourself, you're protecting your parents, your grandparents, your kids, your friends and relatives. You know what I mean? So that to me that was why I decided to get the vaccine, because I didn't actually, at the beginning I was like, whatever, I'm young, I'm not gonna die from this. It's like might be crappy, but whatever, I'll be fine. But then understanding that that would put my elderly family at risk, for example,
Mhm.
that was what made me decide to get the vaccine. So
Sure.
I wonder how much, you know, obviously if you look at the pandemic movies and you believe that what they're saying, which is that like these vaccines are actually not good, and that they're basically just a profit machine for Anthony Fauci, and that they're killing people.
Yeah,
If you believe
absolutely.
that, yeah,
Genocide,
if
yeah.
you believe, right, and you may believe that, and I'm not sure what to believe at this point.
Yeah,
But
that's valid.
if you, yeah, if you do take that as your basis,
Mhm.
then obviously the argument that the vaccines will help you protect your family is just a lie. So that's
Yeah,
just, you
and
could
so
just
it
disregard that.
seems irrelevant if it's gonna cause cancer and all these sorts of issues.
Right,
The vaccine itself
right,
is
right.
gonna cause death and all these things, then I'd rather get
Exactly. Right.
COVID.
So that argument doesn't hold water if you
Right,
come from the foundation of that vaccines are bad, and these vaccines specifically are bad, and that they're really
correct.
just, it's corruption.
Yeah,
Um, but if you come from the perspective of believing the government and the drug companies, which, when you say that, it kind of sounds silly, like why would you believe the government and the drug companies? That's crazy, right? But if you do believe those things, which I think a lot
billions
of
of people
people,
do.
yeah, billions
Yeah,
of people do. I like, in the pandemic movie, he was saying that people who have been like in education for a long time, like
yeah,
educated in universities and postgraduate and all that stuff, they're so invested in the idea that the scientific and governmental version of truth is real,
correct.
that they can't really see beyond that it's hard
Right,
to say, no, actually maybe this is not real, maybe we are being lied to, like 1984 style, I don't know.
right.
Um, so yeah, coming from those education backgrounds, coming from like academia, I wasn't like a PhD or anything, but I spent a lot of time in academia and like college, and I did a post back, and my mom having the PhD and teaching us all that stuff, it made me really believe. I still have a hard time thinking that those people like Anthony Fauci with his big nerd glasses are not are not like telling the truth. He seems like a nerd. Like nerds are nice. Like they tell you the truth. They're smart people, not like liars. But I don't know. Sometimes you get new information, and then you're like, well, I don't know actually. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
mean, I think if you want to learn about Anthony Fauci, you read Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s book on Fauci,
Hmm.
because it details his career, all the details, the things that he's done, and he's not gone after Robert F. Kennedy Jr. legally because all of it is true.
Hmm.
He can't go after him for
Okay.
defamation because all of it's true.
Oh,
RFK
I
worked
see. I
hand
see.
in hand with Fauci for many years in the government. So read his book on Fauci if you want to learn more about
Hmm.
Fauci and his kind of the underbelly of what he does. But yeah, there's tons of information out there, and it's hard to sift through it all. But I think the key thing that I keep coming back to is like who's being censored,
Hmm.
because who's
Who's
being
being
censored are
censored?
the people that are honestly like on the truthful side. They're the ones calling out the stuff that the government doesn't want you to talk about, or the pharmaceutical companies don't want you to talk about, or the educational, and here's the thing is like pharmaceuticals fund a lot of the educational systems that we have. And so,
Hmm.
and pharmaceuticals also, fund the media and fund the commercials, and like they're Big
Hmm.
Pharma has a lot of invested interest in people prescribing vaccines and prescribing medications. And it's a multi-billion-dollar industry for a reason. And there's a reason that
Hmm.
vaccines have no, um, back, what was it, back in 1985, back in 1984, one of those years, they basically, all their liability was taken away. Like liability for vaccine injury was taken away. So no one can sue them for any injury related to vaccines. That's a big problem, in my opinion. And that's a big red flag because no other pharmaceutical product on the market has that sort of liability. Really.
Right. Yeah. So I get that. That makes a lot of sense, and I can see where this whole I won't call it a conspiracy theory. I guess conspiracy means that people are conspiring with each other, right? So
Yeah.
if the idea is that the maybe the drug companies and the people in the government, the senators and people that they're lobbying, are kind of conspiring with each other. They know stuff that we don't know, and that is, I think, perfectly possible. There's no reason that that's not possible. And if that's the case, then obviously it makes a perfect sense to take an anti-vax stance. And I will check out RFK's book, by the way. That sounds
Yeah.
fascinating.
It's great.
Um, so what you used when you used a piece of evidence that that this is true, which
Mhm.
is sounds like a pretty good piece of evidence, which is that RFK never that Fauci never sued RFK for this, because if he did, if it was fake, he would sue him for libel, or
For
and he
disinformation.
didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And there's just, I mean,
that
he proves all the documentation, all the stuff that he says in the book is backed up by all this
okay.
documentation and stuff. So it's not just his story about, and it's like all his documentation of his career and things like that. So it's all evidence based. And like I
Yeah.
said, it's he's not gone after him legally for defamation, which Fauci would do if this stuff was untrue and it was actually tarnishing his reputation.
Right.
And
So and then, but whenever I read something or watch something from the scientific community, so I'm always suspect of let's say mainstream media, which I think um, all of
same,
the mainstream media pretty much, or most of them, are propaganda, like CNN on one
agreed,
side and Fox on the other side. I think both of them
agreed.
are propaganda because they're just showing one side of the story. But I feel like I trust the scientific community more than I trust the media, for sure. I definitely do. Because the mainstream media's purpose is, I think, that their goal, their motivation is to maximize view time and therefore get maximized ad revenue. So they're creating these narratives that turn everybody against each other in order to create their little tribe of people that feel under threat from the other tribe, so that they'll be fiercely loyal and they'll be able to sell them whatever they want, essentially through advertising. So
Sure.
I see media as like fundamentally having a corrupt motivation. But I don't, well, at least for in the way that it is here in the United States, the mainstream media.
Yeah.
But I don't see the scientific community that way, partly because of my mom and the people that I
Yeah.
know in the scientific community that are very like truth oriented. And then uh,
Right.
also that the scientific community has at its basis the scientific method, which is, and it's a way of thinking, a way of approaching reality, where
Mhm.
you're saying, okay, I believe this thing. Let's see if I can disprove it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's sort of the at least the way it's supposed to work. I'm not saying that it always works perfectly, but at least that's the sort of foundational dogma, if you will, of science. Is like, if you believe something, you try to disprove it, and if you can't disprove it, then maybe you can find some evidence that actually supports it. Essentially, like do experiments,
Right.
and see what's real through it, through empirical epistemology by experimenting with reality rather than just thinking about it. So I
Totally.
tend to believe what comes out of the scientific community. But based on these pandemic movies and how they kind of showed the interconnectedness between like the funding for the studies
I was going to say
and
that.
the people that stand to benefit from those studies, for example,
Correct.
the big drug companies sort of funding studies and skewing science in that way, it makes me wonder, like maybe science as an institution is not as trustworthy as I thought because of the money that's involved.
Well, that's
I
right.
don't know.
And the profits that are to be made, like there's a reason that Monsanto and Bayer are now owned by they're one thing. And it's like Monsanto makes all the pesticides and herbicides that cause cancer, and then Bayer's over here like cleaning it up with all their medications. And it's like it's wild how much the scientific community can be infiltrated and influenced by money. And that's just unfortunately the nature of it, right? Whoever's funding the study, they're funding the study for a specific outcome oftentimes. And there's a reason that, for example, like I'm very anti-vax. And the reason I am is because there's no long-term data on basically the entire childhood schedule that's given and actually mandated to children in this country. There's never been a clear study that studies autism, that studies non-vaccinated children versus vaccinated children. Now that's crazy to me. Like we're at
There's
this
never
point
been
in
a study on
history,
that.
there's never been a study that compares unvaccinated with vaccinated children in relation to autism. Until
That's
Robert
very
F. Kennedy
strange.
Jr. is now in office now, who is trying to get that to happen because
Really?
yes. So
Wow.
this is what I'm
That's a
talking about.
very
Like, and
that's
here's
strange
another,
because you would think that with it being such a hot topic
yeah.
that you would have so much push for that specific study.
Yeah, but
With
see, it's not
people
gonna benefit
saying,
the vaccine companies. That's the problem. It's not gonna benefit them, and that's why they're not gonna do it. That's why they
so
haven't done it.
what about some other source of funding? Like couldn't a for example, maybe you can't get through the FDA, but it may be a source of
Right.
funding from let's say a freedom oriented group. You call it the medical freedom
Community.
movement, right?
Totally,
So
totally, and
there's
there's a lot of that
definitely,
happening.
yeah.
Mhm.
So there's
And there's a
definitely people within that movement that might want to fund that, I would think, people or organizations.
absolutely, people who are very dedicated, but the thing is you're up against multi-billion-dollar corporations who are gonna do anything they can to squash you and discredit you and throw out your studies. And
Mm,
so I think that's the thing that people aren't aware of is that like it's like the medical mafia. They don't want that information getting out. Just like they don't want the pandemic information getting out. They don't want any of this stuff getting out. So they're gonna de-license people, take away their medical licenses, take away their funding. They're very powerful, okay? And they're gonna squash your studies and remove them from scientific journals. And this is what has been happening is the censoring of actual legit data. And I can speak to another very simple example, breast implants. I had breast implants for 18 years. I had no idea what they actually do to the body. Literally
mhm.
none. There was no informed consent on my part as to the 4 types of cancer that they cause, all of the autoimmune diseases, the cancer. Like the different autoimmune issues that I had and all the different symptoms that I had were all related to my breast implants. As soon as I took them out, my health radically improved. And
Wow.
so these are and I didn't know that breast implants leach 40 plus toxins and heavy metals into the body.
Hmm.
Just didn't know that because
Yeah.
it's not sold to you when they're trying to sell you breast implants. And the
Mm,
thing that I want to point to here is that breast implants are studied by the breast implant manufacturers. So they have no invested interest in making sure these are safe. There's
mhm.
been no
Yeah.
long-term safety data done on breast implants, and they've been put in women's bodies for 50 years. And
Wow.
the reason is
Yes.
because the studies are funded by the very companies that sell them.
Yeah.
And so they're gonna make them look safe.
Yeah.
Like,
It sounds like
that's what they do. It's very unethical, but they're doing it.
there's definitely a lot of corruption in the pharmaceutical industry. I think
Yeah.
I started realizing that when I started meditating.
Yeah.
And I realized, and like I had sort of depression and anxiety in college, and then I
Yeah.
started, I had started meditating. I started having psychedelic experiences that really sort of helped me untangle what was going on in my mind. But then there were the SSRIs and all that stuff, and I tried them, and I was like, just kind of like, this is like kind of numbing it, not like actually um, like breaking through. And then
Right.
these substances that are actually better than the SSRIs are illegal.
Right.
And I was like, why are they still illegal? And it kind of becomes obvious that there's a lot of corruption in the medical world and the pharmaceutical company world.
Yep.
It's just the nature of the beast with sort of the way that capitalism is, that it allows if we don't have regulations on them,
Correct.
then they just have a motivation to profit as much as possible, and they'll hide stuff if they need to.
Correct.
So it's clear to me that there is a level of corruption there. But what concerned me about the vaccines and why I decided to get them for myself, even though I had people saying that they were, like, obviously anti-vax communities shouting that this is bad, you shouldn't do it. But
Right.
when I would hear the anti-vax community saying this is bad, you shouldn't do it, and then this is before I watched Pandemic, obviously, and then
Yeah.
the scientific community saying this is good, you should do it. I kind of leaned toward the scientific community because
Sure.
of that background that I had,
Yeah. That makes sense.
and also just that argument that you're protecting the people around you. It's not about you. It's about protecting the people around you. Spoke to me because I didn't want to put my family at risk. Like that was really the main thing. It's, I want to make sure that I protect them. So
But that was also based on
basically,
the lab the vaccines work, which they
right.
don't.
Right. So
Yeah.
so the thing is that I think that there are two possible premises that could be possibly true, right? I would say I don't know the answer to which one of them is true or not. It's sort of like the Buddhist practice of not knowing. Like I can't know that. It's something that I could believe, but I can't fully know. So because, like, to me, I don't feel like I can know anything beyond, like I said, this experience of this moment, and that there is existence, and everything else is a belief based on the idea that my mind is working correctly, I'm not being manipulated by disinformation. All
Right.
these things, all these assumptions are there underneath any belief that I have.
Sure.
So I could take the belief that like you're saying, vaccines are like a bullshit thing that's being pushed on the population by greedy corporations that are and Fauci that's working with them. And then on the other hand, I could take a different belief, which is that there is a pandemic that's happening right now. Whether it leaked from Wuhan lab, which I thought since the beginning, honestly, it was pretty obvious to me. It's like,
Correct.
what, this just started across from the Wuhan lab? That
Right.
makes a lot of sense.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but whether it leaked or not, there's a pandemic. People
Yep.
are dying. Whether that's true or not, I think we all knew people that got COVID. My sister had a long COVID, who was working with ayahuasca a lot of the time. Reminds me of you, actually. She has similar views and similar way of working with the medicines and stuff. So wait, where was I going with that? My brain is tired from not
That's
sleeping.
okay.
Oh
I
yeah.
think
So basically, the two possible premises, right? If you take the premise that you're correct about vaccines being BS,
yeah.
then it obviously makes sense that you're not protecting your family by taking vaccines, and you should obviously stay away from them. But if you take the other belief, then it feels like a big risk not to get the vaccines. And I think that that's why the government was, I mean, at least that's in that belief system, in the belief that this is actually, vaccines are good. The government can say, okay, listen, we need to stop people from watching this pandemic video because it's going to stop people from getting vaccinated, and that's going to kill other people. That's going to kill innocent people, elderly people, babies that can't get the vaccine. So in that paradigm,
Mm-hmm.
it is actually sensible to limit access to disinformation or misinformation, is what they would see it as, right?
Yeah.
So it really comes down to what you believe, and then that forms the whole direction of your political stance and your stance on these issues. And I
Yeah.
guess it really comes down to, like, if we can't trust the fact checkers like they showed in Plandemic, if we can't trust fact
No.
checkers,
No.
how do we even know anything? Like, how do we know
Well,
that the facts that we're getting are real?
yeah, I mean, you talk to the people doing the research, right? Or you talk to the people that are seeing the thing. So, for example, like all the frontline doctors that got their licenses taken away during that time, they were the ones who were like coming up with all these like amazing treatments for COVID that were being, slandered in the mainstream media. They were actually healing people, like hydroxychloroquine and like other amazing like pharmaceutical approaches to helping people with COVID that weren't killing people. Like putting people on ventilators was killing people. Giving people what's it called? Resdemivir. I don't know how to say pronounce it correctly, but that
Remdesivir, I
drug.
think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That drug in particular was just killing people in the
Mhm.
hospital. And so, and there's documentaries on all this, and y'all can find this stuff online if you research it, right? It's just, you got to know where to look. But I think that, when you start to dig into those details, which is what I was doing at the time, I was like, I'm calling bullshit on all this, because they're not pushing this for no reason. They're not pushing it this quickly through FDA approval, like without me checking all of this stuff. Because first of all, they're like putting mRNA technology into a vaccine, which is the first time they've ever done it. They're doing it at a rapid speed, and then they're trying to force it into people's bodies, and they're mandating it. In order to enter a cafe, you have to be vaccinated in a liberal city. To me, that is absolutely crazy. And there's something that's going on. There's something that they're trying to do within that vaccine that isn't just beneficial. And so when I started to dig into that, I went, why are they censoring and taking and deplatforming all these people who are trying to speak out about this potentially being a problem? Because I think that's the beauty of the scientific method. That's the beauty of the scientific community, is that there is open debate about things, right? About, okay, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. And you're going to come to the right solution by having all the heads in the room, all trying to come up with solutions. But if you silence half of them and say, oh, your stuff is bullshit, and these people are the only people that know what's going on, then you limit the potential solutions that could have helped people. And that's what all of us were saying, was like, hey, vitamin C really works. Hey, like all these very simple solutions like work to help people overcome COVID, for example. But no, the only answer and the only thing that they were pushing was the vaccine was the answer. And then now it's proven, even in this Pfizer documentation, that they didn't even have the data to back up their claims around the efficacy of the vaccine, and that it didn't actually stop transmission. It wasn't even like working as they said it was. And so people were forced and lost jobs and closed their businesses and all these things, and were, trapped in their country, couldn't travel, all these things that went on because they were unwilling to take a vaccine that actually wasn't even effective. And so and it was actually more damaging than helpful. And now, like I just saw Mickey Willis produced another film that I just saw the premiere of here in Austin, that's all about the vaccine injured. So the people that were in the vaccine, the initial Pfizer trials for the vaccine, and all of their vaccine injuries were completely just like taken off the website, taken out of the data. Like, but these people have, I mean, I saw the people in the film, and I saw the people in the audience. I mean, these people have severe vaccine injuries, and they've just been silenced and censored and squashed on every social platform. Mainstream media doesn't talk about them, but there's a lot of them. And now the data is coming out even more that, like, the turbo cancers and the nervous system dysregulation and long-term COVID and all these things that are going on that are related to the vaccine, not just to the COVID virus, but to the vaccine itself specifically. And the amount of deaths that came from after the vaccine, right? Once people started, within the first 30 days, the amount of people that died from the vaccine is huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
And so
So
this is the stuff that drives me crazy.
yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
So it really, so to me, I have this question about how we know the things that we know, how we know. So you were just talking about how you listen to the doctors that were saying, hey, this is not, the vaccines are not good. You, in the video, the pandemic movie, I saw several of those doctors
Yeah.
talking about, how these vaccines are not, they haven't been studied enough, or they're problematic, and we should be speaking out, we should stop doing this. And I saw those doctors in the pandemic videos. However, it occurs to me when I'm watching those videos that Mickey is choosing people to feature that are agreeing with his viewpoints, right?
Sure.
So he's not putting in my sister, who's a nurse, who in NYU, or was in NYU, now she's in Connecticut, who was there in the pandemic and saw like what was going. She was working in the ICU during that time.
Yeah.
And saw the difference between, vaccinated versus unvaccinated individuals and how they survived. Like saw like on the ground, like boots on the ground, like seeing the death. So he's choosing certain people to feature, and I think that's just the nature of documentary. Sometimes
Totally.
it's the nature of media. We're the only one that's the opposite of that. I think Meditation Magazine is the only opposite of that. We're featuring people that we disagree with, or that I disagree with, or featuring people that are totally diverse voices, because I want to know what's going on. I don't want to put out a narrative. I want to know what's happening.
Sure.
Yes, but I think that all these other ones are trying to put out a narrative, including Mickey, to some extent. Because if you look at the video, it's not like, oh, here's what this doctor's saying about why vaccines are good, or here's what the doctor's saying about why vaccines are bad. It's only the one side of it.
Totally.
So what I would ask you is, if you're watching, what these doctors are saying, but you're only getting half of the story because maybe you're only watching the pandemic doctors rather than doctors from the other side of the aisle or whatever, the other side of the debate, then like even though they are doctors and they are authorities, doesn't that give you perhaps a bias in your way of looking at things, like a bias toward the ones that you're watching rather than the ones that you just never notice or never watch?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think in any situation you can find yourself in an echo chamber, right, where you're only seeking
Mhm.
information from a certain lens, for sure. But I also think that at that time there was a $1 trillion media campaign and propaganda machine to convince people a certain thing. And so when you see that happening, you go, what's on the other side of that? What's the other opposing opinion? Because we're just being completely like 24/7 inundated with what we should be doing from the government's perspective and the pharmaceutical industry's perspective. And so you couldn't avoid that. You couldn't avoid that if you wanted to, because you were actually wearing a mask every day and you were forced to show a vaccine card before you entered a restaurant. Like you couldn't avoid that shit. That was in your face. That was taking your job away, right? Like that was, but the other side, most people, well, I think those who wanted to know did. They looked at what are the other doctors doing? What are these other people who are being censored and silenced? What are they saying? Because I'm not buying the bullshit from the government, right? Like, so like there, so I think, yeah, I think at that time you couldn't get away from the propaganda. It was everywhere. You had family members. I mean, I can't tell you how many friends I have who completely separated from family members, friends, people completely disown them over their beliefs around the COVID issue, over them not wanting to wear masks, not wanting to get vaccinated. I mean, I have friends who like, they were completely like outcast from their family units for thinking differently. And to me, that's wrong. To me, I think you and I can agree on that. Like that's really crazy polarization and that's not respecting people's views. And look, gratefully, my family is very open-minded and my parents got the vaccine, but I was like, screaming from the rooftops, don't get it. Right. But they respect me and they're like, whatever you want to do, Amber, like I respect you. Right. And that's what I love about my family. But my other friends didn't have that experience. People lost their
Yeah.
jobs, they lost their livelihoods, they lost family members, friends. Like it was a huge dividing thing for everyone.
Yeah. It's really sad about the way that these things can hurt families and
Yeah.
pull people apart and polarize our country. I think that's one of the reasons I really value this conversation between me and you, talking about these things, even if we may not see it exactly the same way.
Right.
It's really helpful. I think people. It's part of what I want to show with this magazine issue is that we can have these conversations in a respectful way and not in a way that causes more division and anger, but in a way that is helping people to understand each other. So
Totally.
yeah, and if you have a few more minutes, I wanted to get into RFK and Trump specifically. I know you
Sure.
don't agree necessarily with everything that Trump is doing,
Right.
but I'll just tell you why this is such an important issue to me.
Sure.
And that one of the reasons that we even are exploring these issues for this current meditation magazine. So
Sure.
last year we did the peace issue, which was about peace in the world,
Yeah.
and that was a really important issue because when I started it in late 2023, there was October 7th, 2023, in what happened in Israel and Palestine
Mm,
started going crazy,
gotcha.
and obviously that's been a bad situation for a long time.
Yeah.
But that explosion, October 7th, and not explosion, but the explosion of the whole conflict, that
Yeah.
sort of everything went up in flames, and is continuing to go up in flames.
Yeah.
It was very hard for me as somebody with Jewish heritage,
Mm,
to see what was happening, in on both sides.
yeah. Yeah.
It was very traumatic. I guess secondhand traumatic. I got very depressed for several months,
Mm,
and I thought that there was going to be just no solution, and we're going toward this like terrible sort of apocalyptic outcome over there.
mm.
Um, because I didn't see a solution. That most of the people don't want the two-state solution. They don't want the one-state solution. Nobody wants any solution. Everybody just wants to keep fighting until the end of
Oh,
times. I don't know.
that's it. That's it.
So yeah,
Unfortunately.
it took creating that issue, the peace issue of exploring, talking to Palestinian and Israeli peace activists on the ground in
Mm.
Israel, how they were working, what their vision was.
Oh, cool.
It took yeah, people like ex Hamas, ex IDF coming together in conversation. It took
Wow.
those it took those types of conversations to be able to, for me to see a path to peace, and how there was a way forward that wasn't so dark, like that was
Love it.
hopefully a light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm.
It took making the issue to see that for me to see it. I didn't have an agenda at the beginning. I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought it was going to be a very depressing issue. So in this year, so coming from, like I said, a liberal background, I guess, in New York and places like that, the general consensus among family and friends and everybody that I know about Trump was that he's just and I actually worked on Wall Street and a long time ago, and I have people that met him, and the general consensus about him in general is he's a selfish guy, just cares about himself, basically just wants power, and will do whatever he has to do to keep his power. And that scared me. It still scares me. That's why I didn't vote for him either time. Even though I didn't think that the candidates were great on the Democrat side either. They didn't scare me in the way that Trump did, because it's like, at least these people are like trying to pretend that they're, Democratic, and that they're trying to, go with American democracy. At least they're trying to pretend that, even if they're not. So they're not going to become like a long-term dictator or something like that, like a Putin or something. But Trump scared me in that I felt that he could become a Putin or a Maduro or a Castro, or a Mussolini or something like that, because like these people, especially the ones that are now that we know more about, that we're more aware of because they're around right now. Castro passed the power to his brother. Then in Venezuela, it was Hugo Chavez passed the power to his to Maduro, without really having real elections. And that scares me, because I think it's great to have elections, even if they're two sides of a bad system or whatever. Like, at least we can pick our lesser evil. I don't know. At least we have that illusion of choice. It's kind of nice to at least feel like we can pick our flavor of evil or whatever. But what scares me with Trump is that I worry that he'll just keep the power and make fake elections like what Putin did. And if he doesn't make fake elections, at least he'll put in his next person, like his son, or maybe JD Vance, who's going to be a loyalist to him or whatever. That's just what worries me, is that he's going to create sort of like a dynasty that will take away our like semi-freedom of choice.
I'm
I don't know.
Curious where that came from. I'm real curious where that came from, where that belief came from. If I could just ask you.
Yeah. Yo, it's great. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Because I've never thought that. So I'm curious where that came from.
Yeah. That's wonderful. That's why I want to get into these conversations, because there's a lot of the time, the bubbles that we're in create this. It's a whole different reality.
It is.
It's not just a narrative; it's a whole other reality. And that reality is filled with people that have this belief. For example, the bubble. So I try not to be in a bubble. That's like a very conscious practice of mine. I go on X so that I can see what all of the X people are saying, and then I go on like mainstream media, which is saying exactly the opposite things, and I go on Instagram sometimes. There's all different. I have totally different bubbles in all of these things, and I get totally different information based on which platform I go to. And it's I think you have to make a practice of engaging with information that you disagree with, or that contradicts your belief, in order to get not only in order to get a big picture, but in order to get the social media algorithms to show you more of that.
Agreed. Because otherwise you live in an echo chamber.
Right. Yeah. All they do is show you what you're looking at already. So if you only look at things that agree with your beliefs, then you just get into this very strong bubble.
Totally.
So one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you is because you seem like you're in a different bubble. And I'm like, we could talk across bubbles. This is so cool. I can tell you what's going on in this bubble. You could tell me what's going on in that bubble. Usually you don't get that opportunity. It's very hard to get that opportunity. And when people do get that opportunity, then they start fighting, and then you don't really get the information. You never get the truth, because you're like in a self-reinforcing echo chamber, like you called it.
Correct.
So the reason that belief comes up for me is two or three reasons. The first is that the main bubbles that I'm in, I would say the bubbles of family, of like city,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? The people that you talk to,
Yeah.
like even just here in my building, my apartment building, if I run into people, I talk to them. Everybody sort of has the same belief. And in Miami, it's a little different because there's more mixing.
Mm.
Cuban people are very afraid of communism, so they really went for Trump in a big way because
Yep.
their fear is communism. But
Right.
on the
I
other
think that
hand,
the
the
left
Jewish
especially that
people,
in. Mhm.
yeah. So my wife is Cuban. Her family mostly voted for Trump
Yep.
because they had Castro as their generational trauma,
Correct.
and they anything that goes left is like no, 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 no. We saw that happen before.
Yeah.
No going left, that leads to communism. So that's my wife's family's perspective, a
Right.
lot of them.
Mhm.
And then my family is Jewish, so we have a different generational trauma. Our generational trauma is Hitler,
Right.
in the Germany in the 1930s and 40s, where my family escaped from. My grandmother was in the camps. My grandfather
Wow.
fought the Nazis. My
Wow.
grandmother lost. She had like 9 siblings. Like 8 of them were killed. Like she was
Jesus.
like a little girl in the camps. Like she ran away into the forest, like that type of thing. From
Horrible.
she got through a hole in the camp uh, in the fence. I don't even know if she knows which camp she was in because she was like a little girl. She ran
Wow.
into the forest and survived by eating like leaves and stuff. And like
Wow.
yeah, that's our trauma, right? So
Yeah.
that trauma is like the fascist trauma, the right
Mm.
leaning,
Yeah.
the right leaning dictatorship, the extreme on the right, right? So
Mm.
my wife's trauma is the extreme on the left, and my her family's trauma, her generational trauma is the extreme on the left, and my family's generational trauma is the extreme on the right. So
Mm.
whenever I talk to Jewish people, my family, friends from high school, kids that I grew up with, and and even just a lot of people in liberal cities like in New York and even Miami here,
Yeah.
it's just that same idea of this is sort of going toward the extreme on the right side, which reminds us of our generational trauma, especially Jewish people, of like Hitler. And I don't see Trump as Hitler right now, to be clear. I think Hitler
Yeah.
was, he killed millions of people as a genocide. Like there's no parallel to that with Trump. Like Trump didn't do anything like that, and hopefully he never will.
Right.
But the sort of taking the same steps of um, creating what it seems like creating division between races by pushing on hot button issues like DEI and immigration, which can appear to be racial issues to people on the left. Though
Sure.
I've heard good explanations from people on the right of why those things are problematic.
Yeah.
But to people on the left, they're often seeing like, okay, he's going after brown people with the immigration. He's going after black people with the DEI, attacking DEI. He's going after the minorities just like Hitler did. He's
Mm.
going after he's taking power as much like dismantling democratic institutions and norms, just like Hitler did in the 1930s and 40s. And what Jewish people have this sort of like I do, I have this thing of where I grew up in a Jewish school when I was a kid, and the teachers always they were from the previous generation, and they were like, our parents went through this thing in Germany. Your grandparents, like pointing to us, your grandparents went through this thing. Like you
Right.
know this from your family. Um, don't let that happen here. This happened all of a sudden, sort of in Germany, where it was like a democratic place and civilized, and then boom, this just kind of happened. It grew out of societal discontent, and um, don't let that happen here. And then when we get to a point where we're starting to see parallels, and I talked to Marianne Williamson, actually, one of the interviews for this issue was
Excellent.
Marianne Williamson. Actually, I
Okay.
talked to her twice. Talked to her once before the election and once after the election, and she was very very alarmist because she's also Jewish and she's from the previous generation. I think she's like late 60s, I think, or something, somewhere in her
Mhm.
60s.
Yeah.
She so she's closer to that. She's closer to that trauma, and she's just very like sounding the alarm, like this is going toward fascism. Like we need to stand up, we need to say something, we need to do something. This is very dangerous. Like this is not just another moment in history. This is like a crucial moment where we have to do what the Germans didn't do. We can't just sit there and do nothing. We have to stop it before it happens. um, so anyway, that's sort of where this you could call it a belief, anxiety. They're both wrapped up
Got it.
together.
Got it.
um,
Okay.
Like if you have that belief, then there, of course, there's anxiety around it, right? So
Yeah.
what I want to do is I want to reach out to your bubble,
Yep.
to you over there as someone in your bubble who can speak with with clarity and without you know being
Insult.
too tied to your without insult,
Yeah.
without being tied to your ego.
Yeah.
Just being able to like talk as meditators, as spiritual people who are in these different bubbles. Like, what is your perspective on all of that?
Yeah. I think, to me, I don't relate Trump to dictatorship at all. I don't relate him to Hitler at all. I see him actually as the leader of, I mean, this is what the campaign he ran on, which was, I am going to drain the swamp. I'm going to expose the corruption in this country. And there's a lot of Americans, obviously, who voted for him who want that. We desperately want the corruption that's been going on for the last 4 years since the pandemic to be exposed. And a lot of it has been exposed over the last 4 years as it's been unraveled, right? And JFK is a big part of that. Trump is a big part of that as well.
RFK, yeah, RFK. You
RFK
mean
Jr.
just because
RFK,
you had to say JFK, so I was just clarifying.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
RFK Jr.
Mhm.
is, he was very he's very much all about exposing the vaccine industry and the pharmaceutical industry. And so that's why I fell in love with him, is because I followed his work and all of his research and all of his incredible high integrity, what I think to be very high integrity work around the medical freedom issues. And, I think for many of us who went through COVID and we saw how the medical industry, it was just medical tyranny in our eyes, right? Our rights were being taken away. Those of us who didn't want to get vaccinated were not allowed to travel. We weren't allowed to enter cafes, and we weren't allowed to go anywhere without a mask. To us, that felt like dictatorship. That felt like we were already living in Nazi Germany. We were already wearing the masks. We were already being pushed into a certain indoctrination. And that was done on a global scale, not just in the US, but globally. And so for those of us from this angle, we're like, that was wild and so out of control. The fact that you spend $1 trillion on propaganda to convince billions of people to not only wear a mask and socially distance and all these things, right? And get the vaccine that now has been proven to create all these issues. It's like, not only did all of that happen, which was literally medical tyranny in our eyes, right? Is that we were being forced to take a medical thing in your arm in order to exist in society. To us, that is dictatorship. That is not communism, but it's dictatorship. And so we were desperate to remove the leaders that did that, right? Which is Biden and Kamala and the Democrats, because to us that felt like complete tyranny.
But
And
actually, the COVID pandemic started during the Trump administration, didn't it? Or it started right before the Trump administration? It was 2019 it started, but at the very end of 2019. It was really 2020 that it started. It was the beginning of 2020.
2020
That
was
was
when
after
Biden
Trump took
came
off.
into office.
Huh?
Yeah. I
That
think
was when Trump had taken office for the first time. And oh no, it was 2020 was no,
Biden.
who was coming in? It was Biden
Biden.
coming in.
Yeah. So what Trump did
Hmm.
is he fast tracked the vaccine, but then Biden was the one who instigated all of it. I mean, yes, Trump was
Hang
part
on.
of it.
So
I'm
the
not saying he
beginning,
wasn't.
but the beginning of the pandemic, Trump was there, right? Wasn't he there
Correct.
at the beginning of the pandemic? And he did.
Correct.
I remember he did certain things. Like I remember seeing a video of him taking off his mask at the White House, like very like provocatively, like like clearly showing that he didn't believe in it. But at the same time, he was the one I think that was there presiding over the what was it 2 weeks to flatten the curve or to stop the spread or
Oh
whatever it
yeah.
was. Wasn't he?
I
He
mean,
was there.
yeah, he
He was
followed
doing that
Anthony
stuff.
he followed Anthony Fauci's guidelines, which is, I think, and even to this day, he doesn't own up that that was the wrong thing to do. And to me, that's just ridiculous. Like all of that, Anthony Fauci's guidelines, none of it's based in scientific data at all. Like that's proven now. Like the social distancing, that was complete bullshit. Like there's no data to back that up at all. And so all the stuff that was put into place during that time, Fauci was a part of obviously instigating all that. Trump just went along with it. And he also did the fast tracking of the vaccine. So what is it called? Operation Warp Speed, which was to get the vaccines out as soon as possible. Now, so while he might have been taking off his mask and using hydroxychloroquine to deal with his COVID issues, like he was also still pushing the vaccine agenda, right? And so that came out, and then Biden came into office, and then that's when really I think things got really bad for the next 4 years, right? And for me, my biggest issues was the open borders, millions of people flooding this country, flooding the states, living off of all these welfare, all the funding that went to illegal immigration. Like to me, that made absolutely no sense that the borders were wide open, and that all these people were coming in that were living off the systems here. All of our taxpayer dollars are going to fund illegals in our country. And so anyway, there's a lot of points here I could talk about, but
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Honestly, the immigration issue is something that I think also people in my bubble or whatever often don't understand why immigration is such a big issue for people in other bubbles.
yeah.
And I didn't understand it until recently. I've been having these types of conversations. Last week, I had a conversation with Dr. Christopher Ford, who was in the first Trump administration as the nuclear non-proliferation secretary in the
Wow.
Department of State, which was a really interesting conversation and got into the immigration issue. And he talks about how we need to have rule of law and like we can't just let everybody in and things like that. He makes some good points, but I still, if I'm thinking about it myself, I can see a balance, I can see a nuance, but when I think about it, I lean toward the idea, which to me feels like a sort of a spiritual idea, that all humans are humans, right? It's South Americans, Central Americans, North Americans, we're all humans. And that, I mean, obviously also people from other continents and perhaps people who are born in the middle of the ocean, but we're all humans, right?
Sure.
So why do we make this classification where like we are Americans and other people are foreigners, and therefore if people come here from other places, that's not good. Why do we? What to you says that that is not a good thing? And I know that might seem a very simplistic question to you from being
Yeah.
in the bubble where that's such a big issue, but in
Yeah.
the bubble where I come from, it's really like, oh, I don't get it. Why is this an issue?
Yeah, totally. No, I think
Mhm.
I think it's not about legal immigration, it's about illegal immigration. And this is where I think there's like a lot of confusion, right? Is like people on the more conservative lens are not saying that legal immigration is a bad thing. Please come from all over the country, come to our country, like please come. Take advantage of what we offer here. Like we are a multiracial, you know, place. It's and just like many other countries, like London, right? Like look at some of these other countries, right? We all have open borders for illegal immigration. The issue is illegal immigration. The issue is that Biden opened up the borders and allowed anybody to come in. And what that allowed was a lot of degenerate, like criminals, to come in. And that is a reality. You can't deny that. Like there are Venezuelan gangs that have taken over hotels in Denver. Like my friend lived in Denver. She's like, Amber, I couldn't go downtown without a gun in my car because I didn't trust that I wasn't going to get jumped by the Venezuelan gangs that took over Denver. Like it's
Right.
a
And but can
problem.
I just jump in on that one? Like,
Yeah.
so I think that what happens with the media is if you're watching, for example, if you watch Fox News, they'll spend whole news cycles
Yeah.
on the Venezuelan gang, right?
Right.
But then if you watch other things like CNN or whatever, they don't spend any news cycles on that. That doesn't mean CNN is right. It just means that they're focusing on different things, right? So they're
Correct.
focusing on different things, and I think that they focus on different things in order to scare the population about certain things. So with CNN, they're trying to scare the population. Trump is going to be the next Hitler-like
Correct.
dictator, Putin or
Correct.
whatever. They're trying to create that narrative in like a sneaky
Correct.
kind of way.
Correct.
I think the same thing happens with Fox News. They're trying to create scary narratives of, illegal immigrants are coming and murdering everyone. They took over these buildings in Denver, the Tren de Aragua or whatever. Therefore, because this thing happened in this building and this woman was murdered in Texas or something, therefore, we must deport 1 million immigrants. Like, you know what I mean? It seems like they're creating another narrative, like manufacturing consent for a really big, deportation campaign, which is what is playing out right now. And that's another thing that reminds people on the left of fascist kind of regimes where there were these big like nationalist dictators or nationalist strongman type leaders who were like, we got to deport all these other people that are not us, creating that us and them dichotomy. You get what I'm saying? So like, I
Totally.
wonder,
I think
I
what I
wonder
think
if
what
you go ahead.
I think what a lot of Democrats or left-leaning people are not aware of or looking at is that Obama, Bill Clinton, tons of Democrats, they all have deported in massive ways. And there are clips on the internet if you want to watch, where you can watch Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and Obama, and they're all talking about exporting illegals. And they exported millions of illegals during their term, but it was never sensationalized and you know, slandered in the media. And so people didn't know about it. They didn't know how it was happening. And I think why there's such a overreaction around what Trump is doing is that Trump is really loud about what he's doing. He's really loud about the fact that that Biden allowed, which he did, millions and millions of people to flood the border, way more so than ever in our recorded history. Okay, and drug and sex trafficking is at an all-time high because of that. And that's another piece of this that people aren't aware of. The sex trafficking and drug trafficking across the border is a huge reason he's trying to shut down that border, because it's allowing so much of that horrible behavior to continue. The fentanyl crisis, for example, right? Sex trafficking, it's a big issue in this country. People don't want to talk about it, but it's there, right? And so he's, from my perspective and from those that are in my bubble, for example, right, is that we're looking at the numbers of illegal immigrants coming across the border. We're looking at the defunded border police and how they literally have no resources and no capability to even do their job correctly. And then we're looking at all the sex and drug trafficking that's happening, right? And then we're going, okay, look, something has to happen at the border. This is not how you run a country. This is not how you keep a country safe. This is not how you keep like drugs out of a country, like, and here's the thing, like countries all around the world, they all have border policy for a reason. And it's to protect the people in the country. It's to protect what we all pay for, right? And this is the other thing, is like the amount of money that the government, state government, federal government is spending on illegal immigrants is absolutely crazy. Our tax dollars are going to fund people just entering the country, to like literally putting people up at hotels, nice hotels in New York, just because they decided to seek asylum in the United States. That's absolutely wild. It's wild that my tax dollars, we literally gave the government $1 million a year ago, like a couple years ago, like for our taxes. It's insane how much money goes to the government for these sorts of things that are completely and totally, allocated in all these, I think, crazy ways. And so one of the things that Trump, I think, is doing and implementing that I was excited about was the whole, looking at all the fraud that's happening. Like where is money going? Transparency in the government. Where is money going? Where are tax dollars going? That's what I was really excited about, because I'm sick of spending all this money in taxes and getting no benefit from it. Absolutely. I think everyone can agree. Every American agree. Half of our paycheck is going to the government, and we have no idea where that money is going. It's being wasted, like by a lot of random things, right? A lot of they're like, what did Doge find? They found like people are getting like Social Security checks are going out to people who are already dead, or people who are 12. Like it's like the amount of corruption and fraud that's currently happening in the US government in our tax system is absolutely crazy. And to me, that's really worthwhile investigating. It's really worthwhile so that we are a more efficient, productive country, and that our tax dollars are actually going for what we want, And so yeah, I agree. Like, I think I can totally see from that vantage point, from your vantage point, why that would be like, here's the deal. Like, I agree with you. Like, I agree that people should be able to come to our country, all races, all whatever, whoever you are, come to the US but do it legally. Do it legally, like every other immigrant has done, and do it through the process that every other state or every other country has in the world in order to enter a country legally. And don't live off the country and the taxpayers' dollars in order to live here. Like, it's not our job to save people from all around the world and give all of our money to them. Yes, it's a beautiful concept, but like, I don't want to spend half of my income on illegal immigrants who aren't actually doing anything besides just living on the system. And that's just point blank how I feel. And maybe that,
I get that.
we're gonna disagree
That
with
makes sense. I've heard similar things from other people that are living in Texas or places like that.
Yeah.
Um, it's
Where we
it's
see a
just
lot
an
of
interesting perspective. I think what I hear from in the bubble that I've been living in, or that it's hard for me to be able to break out of, is that the facts that I hear are different. Like illegal immigrants, even though they did break the law by coming in, that's nothing that anybody's denying in an illegal way.
Sure.
What I hear, the narrative that I hear, is that usually these are people that are driven out of their countries by essentially wars that our government started, like in Nicaragua and places like that, coups and things like that, destabilized countries. The drug war that was started by Nixon and Reagan and people like that, the drug war has created essentially a black market for drugs, which created the cartels in South America and Central America and Mexico. That creates like extremely destabilized places where there's extreme traumatic things happening to innocent people, women and children, and like most of the immigrants are essentially fleeing from those conditions that were created by our government anyway. And when I talked to Marianne Williamson and Jill Stein also for this issue, I talked to both of them. Both of them had this same sort of perspective, like if you want to fix the immigration issue, stop creating the cartels in the other countries, actually fix the Latin American foreign policy, and try to help them stabilize rather than get destabilizing them. And then we won't have this flood of immigrants coming over. And that I think is a very reasonable position from them, to sort of think about the root causes. I don't think it's a bad idea to have border controls. I think it's a good idea, actually, for the reasons that you mentioned, essentially that like if anybody can come over, who knows who's coming in, like you could have like terrorists coming in.
Correct.
You
And
could
that's
have
another piece then.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the in the bubbles that I've come from, it doesn't seem like the biggest issue. Like in the bubbles that I come from, like universal healthcare is seen as a big issue. Like, why do we have this terrible healthcare system with insurance and stuff like that? You may disagree with that. Also, you may
I
see that.
totally agree. I think it's a racket. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So it's interesting. Like being from Texas, sort of being in that bubble and still also supporting universal healthcare that's an interesting sort of nuanced position that you come from, where you are able to choose what you believe from rather than towing a specific party line. I respect that about you. So yeah, for people in the bubbles that I come from, like universal healthcare is a way bigger issue. It actually affects us on a daily basis. We have to deal with these insurance companies all the time, like denials of coverage, like having to go through this whole terrible, like annoying thing if you just need to get a medication when you should just be able to go get a medication, like without all these things standing in the way. They're like, to me, that's like a really big issue. Or like what's going to happen with AI taking over essentially all the work. Like that's another really big issue. Like AI, I think immigrants are taking the work. It's freaking AI is going to take all the work. And I'm okay with that if we have a way to distribute the wealth, so that it's not only the big tech companies that are going to have all the money. It's like everybody will be able to have a nice life. Like, to me, those are issues that are going to impact us on a day-to-day basis. The immigration issue, when I hear about that, I'm like, why is this so important? If this, maybe for you, if paying $1 million in taxes, and you feel like a lot of it is going to people who are not contributing to the system. But in the bubble that I come from, bubbles or whatever, the facts that people believe are that when illegal immigrants come over, they cannot access most government services because they do not have a social security number and stuff like that. And some of them may pay taxes, some of them may not pay taxes, but they're not really getting the services that you're paying for because they're just undocumented and they don't get access to those things. However, I'm not sure if that's true, but that's the facts that people say in the bubble that I come from, even though it might not be correct. And maybe you have more clear information on that. I'm not sure. But then I would ask you where you get the information. If it's just from, for example, Fox News, or from a bubble, from your own bubble, then it's just a clash of the information from this bubble versus the information from that bubble. Like, how do you know what to believe? You know what I mean?
I think you have to look at the state spending. You have to look at what each state is spending on illegal immigration. And New York is wild. I mean, they're putting people up at 5-star resorts and letting them live there, giving them credit cards. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw the corruption there, by the way. I was there. I was in the real estate industry in New York a long time ago. I saw what happened. So there's definitely stuff.
Never before been done in this country. And why all of a sudden are we allowing millions of people in illegally and then funding their lifestyles? That, to me, when Americans, my point in this is that Americans are deeply suffering in this economy, barely able to make ends meet, working multiple jobs, both parents, right? Which is ruining the family and children, right? There's like so many layers to this, right? It's like the American people are suffering. And I think that's why people really like Trump, because he's like, America first. We are all suffering while we spend billions of dollars abroad fighting wars we shouldn't be in, which was another thing he ran on, which I was very for, is like stop all foreign wars, which I think
I agree with that 100%. I agree with that 100%.
Right? Like, I wanted them to stop funding Israel, stop funding Ukraine, stop all this bullshit. To me, I felt it was just, we're just playing war games. And we're just feeding the war machine, which is, like, there's money to be made in that, unfortunately, which is why I think war continues to happen. But to me, I liked what Trump had to say about, like, let's stop all wars, stop sending money abroad, because they just were giving $50 billion every week to Israel and
Yeah.
Ukraine, right? And now that
Yeah.
he's in office, I'm like, what are you doing with Israel? Like, I'm
Right.
like, what
Yeah.
are you
Yeah.
doing,
It
bro?
seems
Like,
like
you ran on this
I
thing, and now
like that. I liked what he said about that too, but I was skeptical if he was actually going to do that based on just what I
correct.
had heard about him from people who met him and from just the bubble about him being just a selfish guy that didn't care about anybody except for his own interests. Like I was like, is he really going to do that? Is that really in his own interests? I don't know. Maybe he's going to get bought out by some of these big, weapons manufacturers, and then he's just going to continue doing the same thing.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think we still have not seen clearly what he's doing, but I
Yeah.
what I do know is that I liked what he stood on in terms of like get more regulation around the border, stop the foreign wars. These are the things that I was aligned with, and no more medical tyranny, no more pandemic lockdown bullshit. Like that, to me, that was, even though he was initially a part of that, I think he's shifted his approach, and definitely bringing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in gave a lot of people the hope that someone of high integrity like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to be in partnership with Trump, and that if Trump backs him, that's a good thing. Because for me,
Mm.
I wanted him to win. I was all about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And I chose Trump because I knew he was on the ticket with Trump. So,
Yeah.
but with all that being said, like I really think that those are the different angles, and I understand people on the left don't understand those, or maybe they do. They're just like not aligned with them. And I personally think universal healthcare is super important. I would love to have universal healthcare, but also if you look at countries who have universal healthcare, it's also a shit show. It matters how you actually put it into effectiveness, right? Canada, prime example. I have friends up there, they wait 6 months to see the doctor because they have to wait in line behind this bureaucracy of stuff they have to go through in order
So
to see.
I want to ask you about that because I know people in Canada and they're all very happy with their healthcare system and say they don't
Really?
understand why we do the way that we do. So
That's awesome.
whenever I talk to people in Canada, they're on that train. Also, my brother-in-law is from the UK. He's like, yeah, this is all crazy here in America. Like he doesn't understand it. Even he's like,
Totally.
okay,
I don't understand it.
sometimes we waited for stuff that was like not that necessary or whatever, but like overall, it's way better than having to deal with these insurance systems and
I
like the
totally agree.
extremely high cost of insurance and all that stuff. So like from everybody that I've talked to from those countries, they say they are very happy with I mean, compared to the United States, they think it's much better in where they are. And
Yeah.
sometimes they'll abuse the system, and then if they want to get an elective thing, they'll come over the border from Canada to the United States. Like I see that as like a little bit like gaming the systems or whatever, but like
Sure.
I get why they do it, and I get that. But I guess the question to me is like, it's not that I think that we agree in principle that
Yeah.
it's good for everybody to have healthcare and it's good to not pay as much for healthcare. But I think that
Totally.
the thing that we sometimes see differently are the actual facts, because I think that what happens in these bubbles is that the different narratives are not only different perspectives, but even presenting different sets of facts. You know what I
Sure.
mean? So
Yeah.
like the friends that you have in Canada, like how many data points do you have like from that? Like, is it like one friend, two friends? Do they both think that it's, or do all their friends think that it's better in the United States than it is in Canada? Like, what's your sources of information is really the question.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great question. I think, for me, I don't know a ton of Canadian data, but what I do know is that a lot of Canadians are very unhappy with their current government because it's basically communism in many ways. He is a horrible leader, and I know he stepped down, but like he did a lot of things in Canada that people are really unhappy about. And but yeah, the universal health care, I only heard from friends who live there who were like, I hate that it's like this bureaucracy you got to work through, you got to wait for it, whatever. But they also haven't experienced what we've experienced in the US, which is a complete racket of like, we got to spend $1,500 a month for just basic healthcare coverage as an adult, which is crazy that we're paying that much into the system and that we'll never really use, right? We might use it when
Yeah,
we're a lot older and have cancer or whatever. But like right now at this age, I would never go to the doctor. And I have every intention of avoiding the doctor at all costs. So, but I'm spending $1,500 a month on healthcare, which is absolutely crazy in my opinion. So I
yeah,
totally agree with you. I would much rather my taxpayer dollars go to fund that than to fund what is currently being funded. But in order for us to know what's being funded right now by our tax dollars, we got to look at the books, which I think is what Trump is doing, is like, what are we spending money on? What the heck are we
yeah.
spending money on it? And the thing that Biden and Kamala, they never talked about was like, let's balance the budget. Let's look at transparently what the heck we're
That's
doing with our
true.
money.
Yeah, when Elon started talking about how I've been following Rogan for a long time, like Joe
Yeah.
Rogan.
Remember.
he used to be more on the liberal side, and now he's like on the other side.
Yeah.
When I saw Elon talking about, we on Rogan, we pay more in interest on our debt,
Yes.
like than we do for the entire military or something like that. That's a bigger part of the budget. Maybe it was just that the debt payments, not just the interest, but the debt payments each year are larger than we spend on the entire Department of Defense, which is a huge portion of the budget. It's
Right.
like, I was like, oh, that's not good. That doesn't sound sustainable. And then Kamala decided not to go on Rogan, and that was very, like, obviously, okay, they're obviously avoiding certain topics as well. Like and that got me before the election to think, like, okay, maybe it's not so bad if Trump wins, because they'll at least fix some of this financial problems, the deficit
Correct.
and stuff like that. I don't know. I'm not sold or convinced by his performance so far, but it's interesting to have this conversation with you. And let me just tell you, I'm on 2% battery on my laptop. It's going to die in about 3 minutes.
No
So
worries.
I just want to wrap up with this last thing here. We are deciding right now, probably this week, what we're going to call the theme of this issue. So like the last few years, we had the peace issue, we had the love issue. That was with Gabby Bernstein. I don't know if you know her.
I know her work. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we had the universe issue before that. So what I'm trying to decide is, this year, is it going to be one of the following? And I want to get your thoughts on which of these do you think is the most needed right now in our country.
Okay.
So the unity issue is one idea, which kind of goes with this theme of this conversation of like being able to talk to people outside of the bubble.
Yeah.
The conversation issue, also very similar, to be able to have those conversations like this. The balance issue, to find balance in your thinking rather than in extremism. The impermanence issue, which would be like about the changes that are happening right now and being able to sort of navigate. And the last idea is sort of the empathy or kindness issue. So did any of those words sort of like speak to you as like, this is what the country needs right now? Or do you have a different word in mind?
Oh, I think unity is perfect. And that rings real true to me about this conversation, but also in general, like what's so needed right now is that word of like, let's stand united instead of battling each other constantly and demonizing everybody who thinks outside of our bubbles. Like, it's not serving us, y'all. It's not serving us.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here with me. I got to end the recording because my computer's about to die. Wait, but